Hey guys, today I'm going to talk a little candidly about inflammatory conditions, specifically an autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis. I'll try to make this as short as I can, as I know I'm not the most polarizing speaker. Um, RA is an autoimmune condition, which basically means your body's attacking itself. No one really knows why it's caused, but there's some environmental and genetic components to it. Um, Many inflammatory diseases are very similar, though, in the fact that they are caused by or worsened by the foods that we eat. This is due to the fact that many of these conditions have something similar called leaky gut. Basically, your digestive system is a closed system, and things are getting out of it and into the body, and the body is attacking it as a foreign object. I developed RA when I was a teenager, and I followed the advice of a rheumatologist for about a decade, taking immunosuppressive drugs, chemotherapy drugs, and things like that, because I was always told that my condition could possibly correct itself because you're supposed to grow out of it if you get it when you're younger. Typically, it affects more females than males as well. I've known several people that have had it throughout my life, and it all kind of affects different people in different ways. Sometimes their feet, sometimes their hands, things like that. Um, the Basically your initial drugs that they start you on are typically your corticosteroids and NSAIDs. They like naproxen is kind of their first one that they try, and then you move into your DMARS, which are your antiarrhythmic drugs, and those are usually like azolfidine. It's a sulfa drug. It's kind of the least complicated one. Doesn't have as many side effects and things like that. You get your Plaquenil. Plaquenil, I tried. That one killed my eyesight. I got LASIK now, so I'm okay. But then you move in. I moved into like methotrexate. Methotrexate's a chemo drug as well. Hard on your liver, and moved into Enbrel, Humira. Those are shots you give yourself every week, and then by the time I was 25 or so, I was doing 4 hour long infusions at the doctor's office with a drug called Remicade. And I started just hating my life at that point. So I wanted to look for something a little different. Um, I went and saw a naturopathy doctor who happened to I met in Costco of all places, and the first thing that we did was muscle testing. And if you've ever read about it, or if you haven't, you should read about it. It's pretty interesting. It sounds like absolute sorcery, but it's pretty cool. Where you basically are asking your body questions, yes and no questions, so simple questions, and the body will answer them, and they'll answer them correct every time. You can ask your body questions like, should I have this donut? And, there may be a time when your body says yes. It depends on how depleted you are or whatever. Um, I know it sounds pretty cool, but it's a really cool tool to have at your disposal. The second thing we did was biofeedback testing, where she connected me to a machine and asked me questions about different foods and what I liked and what I didn't like and things like that. I'd respond to the readings on a chart that she compiled, and it was interesting because there was several foods that I just absolutely despise, and some that I try to like because as a bodybuilder, there's certain foods that we're always told, like cottage cheese, has you eat that before bed. It's a slow digesting protein, things like that. But my body just doesn't digest some foods properly, or sensitive to them in general. The way I know that these things aren't working is probably different than other people, I suppose. But dairy, for instance, constipates me. Bread makes my entire torso swell. Yogurt and cottage cheese are the only things that make me gag, and I'm a nurse, so that says a lot, I think. But of course, things like egg whites, white potatoes, shellfish, tuna, dairy, stuff like that, sugar, we're all on the list to avoid. Obviously, I like some of those things, but my body obviously does not. If you look into alkalotic diets, all of those things are pretty much on those lists as well. And it also goes back to supplements as well. I've tried glucosamine. It's made from shellfish. It never did anything to me. I gave it a good 6 months. I feel like if I give anything a good 6 months, it, I should know whether or not it's useless or not by that point. I wouldn't say that for everyone that has arthritis it doesn't work, but for me it didn't. I suppose if you have something like osteoarthritis, it may be better. It's more of a degenerative disease. I may be wrong, but I'm not. I don't think so. The supplements I use now are primarily those that will improve my digestion. So, like I said, it goes back to leaky gut. Um, I feel that enzymes are just a band-aid, um, so I don't use them. The things I use are betaine HCl and Zenlori. I use both of them twice a day, and those are just basically to heal the gut. Um, I feel probiotics are a huge waste of money. The only time I would ever bother with a probiotic is if you had to take antibiotics for some reason, because obviously all antibiotics do is just kill your entire flora in your digestive system. So you would want to use that to get it back up to a reasonable level. I do use glutamine, and I usually get powder because it's more cost effective. It's a very good at repairing the body, post workout and things like that. But it's also a very good digestion aid as well. I use alpha lipoic acid and cinnamon around my carbohydrate meals. It's nearly impossible to replenish glycogen without starches. So you gotta be able to digest them properly, and I'll talk about that. The reason I include that as well a little bit later. Fruit is absolutely useless in my opinion if you're trying to stay lean because it shuts down the liver. The only time that I could see that using fruit would be beneficial would be post workout, the first meal. Basically, what that will do is kind of allow the second post workout meal to replenish glycogen stores. The natural sugars in fruit aren't going to really affect someone with an inflammatory condition. It's usually the refined type sugars, high fructose corn syrup, things like that. So it's not saying that fruit is bad. It's just it's not very good if you're trying to lose fat and things like that. And also you got to think if you have some sort of inflammatory condition, you also got to think about different things. You got to think about everything that you're consuming. Not just what you're eating, but you got to think about if you like booze. And every once in a while, I like to drink a bourbon. And the reason why I went to bourbon is because I started researching what's in all the different booze. So you got your beer, it's gluten. It makes me fall asleep within 5 minutes. Vodka is made out of white potatoes, and those are part of the nightshade family, so they're not supposed to be the best thing for arthritis anyway. So I've never liked vodka, and I don't drink it. Wine, it's made of fruit, but they add a ton of stuff to it that is not so good either. So they add a lot of gluten foods. I don't remember exactly what I went to a vineyard and they tell you all the different things they add to it, and there's a lot of stuff in it. So I don't drink wine anymore. I stick to bourbon. I think it tastes good, and also rum. Rum is made from cane, so you don't want to drink that. So some people might be able to drink tequila, not a lot of people, but I don't really have any problems with tequila. I can drink bourbon and tequila and not get a hangover. Not like I'm saying I'm a drunk or anything like that. I think I drink. You can ask my wife. I think I drink maybe 4 or 5 times a year. So I think people like me a lot more when I do drink because I'm kind of a weirdo. I'm sure we've all heard the same thing about the whites, so the 5 white stuff to stay away from. So you got your white rice, your white potatoes, your sugar, your bread, and your dairy. It absolutely resonates with people in inflammatory conditions because these things are usually loaded with sugar. Your refined breads, refined sugars in your breads, and you got your extra sugars in your dairy and things like that. But if you do consume those, typically you probably will feel like absolute piss. However, white rice, I will say it is gluten free, and you can probably get away with eating it from time to time. Um, I usually I usually can eat most things around my post workouts and not really have any sort of issues. Um, but I only eat it probably twice a week, so I usually stick to leg days. I will have my second meal after my workout would be like a white rice or something like that. I've tried white or the wild black and brown rice, but they just don't really digest well for me. Um, so those are kind of the things that they tell you. It even goes back to um, other issues like your diabetics and things like that. Those are kind of one of the things that they'll tell you to stay away from, are the rice, potatoes, sugar, bread, dairy, things like that, because of the extra sugars that are in them. So, and it does resonate, with pretty much any inflammatory condition as well. Bread and dairy, you shouldn't be eating them. Sugar, I can feel sugar coursing through me within less than a minute. I can feel that there's sugar in anything that I ate. I don't know if I'm just more in tune with my body or not, but I can feel it in my hands and things like that. Most of my arthritis kind of affects my hands, so that's kind of where I kind of gauge what's going on. But so the first thing I always tell people, your vegetables. Vegetables are okay. They're used to move your chyme along and everything when you're in your digestive system. But I think you should really stick to green vegetables. Colored vegetables are okay. There's a lot of extra calories in some of them, like carrots and peas, things like that. So if you're on like a keto diet or some sort of diet or a bodybuilding diet, you're probably not going to be able to. Your coach is probably not going to let you have some of these. So and the one thing I will say is you need to cook the living heck out of your veggies, because I don't think there's a place for raw food diets in an autoimmune condition. Um, some people may disagree with me about that, but if your digestive system is not working properly, why would you want to put extra stress on it by trying to get it to digest some of these really coarse and fibrous vegetables? And it all kind of goes back to the beginning process of digestion, which is mastication. So you need to make sure you're chewing your food really, really well, and in order for everything else to work the way it should down the line as well. So if you're just inhaling your food in less than a few minutes, you're probably going to have some digestion issues and have some bloating and things like that. Your starches are kind of your next thing I'll talk about, and this is the most important thing for any autoimmune condition, is your starch. Like I said, fruit, you're not going to have any issues with fruit. It's a carbohydrate, but again, if fat loss is your goal, fruit's not the way to go. You gotta find a starch that does work for you. There are some that are gluten free that work okay, like quinoa, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, things like that. Your white potatoes are, your potato family is in the nightshade family, like I said earlier, but I tend to stick to red potatoes or the fingerling potatoes with the skins on, because they have a little bit more alkalotic, or they are a little bit more alkalotic, and for whatever reason, I can eat sweet potatoes and I can eat red potatoes with the skins on every meal, and I'll be happy. But I don't really particularly like oatmeal, quinoa, things like that. I don't know. I know a lot of the times when they're processing the oatmeal and stuff like that, some of the gluten can get into the product, and they'll say that on the bag and things like that. And maybe that's part of the reason why my body just doesn't care for it. But I tend to stay away from, just eat the foods that I know work for me. There's other breads that are supposed to be a little bit more easier to digest, like Ezekiel breads and things like that, but I'd say avoid them if you have any issues, like I'm talking about. Any pasta as well, I won't even try it. There's those rice pastas, and they have the gluten-free pastas and things like that, but you'll probably hate it. So I don't see why you would even want to try it. They just don't taste good. Um, the biggest thing though, is absolutely no sugar. Read every single label, because if you go down a salad dressing aisle, every single solitary dressing will have sugar in it. And it'll probably be the first or second ingredient in it. The only ones that I've really found are the Bragg's dressings are pretty good. They're pretty much just like four ingredients: oil, vinegar, salt, and pepper. Something like that. Those are very good dressings too. I like them, but just keep everything pretty simple. Your next thing are your proteins. All proteins are acidic, so you're gonna have to get around that if you're trying to gain muscle. If you're just trying to feel good, you might be able to get by with being a vegetarian or vegan or whatever. But if you're trying to gain muscle, protein is the way to go. Beef is probably your most highly acidic. So if you have problems with it, I would just I wouldn't be eating beef every single meal. Maybe once a day, if not, push it back a little every few days or something like that. There are less acidic proteins, and those are kind of in terms of like eggs and chicken, turkey, things like that. And there's also things you can do to kind of add some, or to kind of neutralize the acidity. So you can add like your greens or, an alkalotic type food to kind of neutralize them. So some people will cook their ground meats in spinach, add spinach to it to kind of neutralize it as well. The only protein that I really have a problem with is casein, and to me, casein is almost as bad as consuming sugar. It makes me completely stiff the next morning. I can't even hardly move, but I've just avoided it. I guess that goes back to what I said earlier about cottage cheese. I can't stand it. Fats are essential to live. You got to have fats. So there are better choices, and I think probably olive oil, coconut oil, MCT oil, and I like macadamia nut oil. Those are kind of my favorites. Liquid at room temperature. Think about that. Although coconut isn't usually, but it's a good fat. None of that vegetable, all that stuff is garbage. There's some great diet choices when it comes to inflammatory conditions. And they work well if you do them right. They're not always necessarily going to be the best for trying to gain muscle or be a bodybuilder or something like that. But if you're looking for just quality of life, there are some great diets out there that work very well. Like the first one I looked at was keto diet way back when I think Dan Duquesne was the kind of like the main guy that came up with the keto diet as far as bodybuilding goes. It's basically keto diet, it just eliminates all carbs. So you can't have any carrots, you can't have ketchup, you can't have anything with carbs. Your carbohydrate intake per day should be less than 30, which is kind of hard to do if you look at it. I think the keto diet works very well for someone that can do it and has the willpower to do it. A lot of times there's certain conditions like, if you have like epilepsy and things like that, you should absolutely be on a keto diet. But I think, not everybody needs to be on the keto diet. Some people just don't do it very well, and some people just don't know how to do it, and they just can't seem to even get in ketosis. I know there's a lot of supplements out there that are supposed to get you into ketosis faster. I've never really gotten into it again since I tried it 10 years ago, but I mean, when you are depleted, you're kind of almost in ketosis when you're doing competitions and things like that. So I definitely had like the smell. I never actually tested my urine to see if I was peeing ketones or anything like that, but I could probably go into a whole nother video about the keto diet, so I'm just going to move along. The specific carbohydrate diet is an excellent diet for IBS, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, and things like that. Basically, what you're doing is you're eating chicken bone broth, and that bone broth is amazing. Gelatin, you're eating really, really cooked vegetables. The gelatin you make kind of like a jello with just regular grape juice and the the straight gelatin. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a good diet for those with really bad digestion issues. And but again, it's not going to work for someone that's trying to lose weight because there's a lot of extra fats in the chicken bone broth and things like that. Alkaline diets, I've kind of already talked about that. You can, I think anyone that has any sort of digestion issue should absolutely know what is acidic and what is alkalotic. And there's a lot of yes and no's type thing going on with those diets. So I can probably post a little blog or something like that on the website and kind of give you guys an idea of what all that is. But another diet is called intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is basically used with a lot of these autoimmune conditions because it eliminates the amount of time that the food is in your body. So the food is the thing causing the problem. It'd be wise to kind of manipulate this. But I can go into that. I feel like everybody kind of knows. I did intermittent fasting again like 10 years ago. So I feel like everybody kind of knows what intermittent fasting is nowadays. And if you're a bodybuilder, I don't think it's the best thing because you got a lot of opportunity for catabolism. So again, all these diets are great. Bodybuilding, like I said, though, I don't think any of them will work. If your goal is strictly feeling better, though, by all means, utilize them. I've tried nearly everything there is that I could find. I've spent 10 years researching autoimmune conditions and inflammatory conditions, seeing different ways how different things would help me. But I do feel that I wasted a lot of time, and if I would have known what I know just in the last few years with competition bodybuilding, I would have hired someone a long time ago to help me kind of work through my digestion and work through everything, because it's kind of funny, your coaches and your gurus and all those things, they know about this stuff better than any of these doctors, and it's pretty interesting, the stuff that I've learned and how to overcome plateaus and things like that. But when you hire a coach, you're getting not only their knowledge, you're also you're basically learning everything you can about them and or about the problems that you're having and things like that. So they're doing research for you, and you're doing research, and you're kind of you're putting two minds together through it as well. So I definitely think a coach in the beginning is very vital if you don't want to waste a lot of time and just get to feeling better quickly. And I can talk about other therapies that do work well. Trey is an awesome chiropractor. There's a lot of cool things that I do as far as like rehabilitation. I get massages every week. I get chiropractic care every week. I've done acupuncture. I do yoga, things like that. Ow, sorry, this cat. And they all are absolutely vital, in my opinion. I don't think I could function as good as if I weren't using them on a regular basis. And even going back to supplements, there's other supplements people talk about, like turmeric. That's a good one. And people sometimes will take those pills, and I just kind of add some to my food. I just add the spice to my food and stuff. Drinking apple cider vinegar in the morning on an empty stomach to kind of get your digestive system kind of working good and kind of getting everything back in order is another thing you can try as well. You have to consider that many of the drugs used to treat inflammatory conditions are very catabolic, like prednisone, which is counteractive if you're you're stressed out and you have a high amount of cortisol, things like that. They're it's also going to make you very hungry, things like that, and you're gonna cheat on diets, things like that. So it helps to know kind of how your body is going to react to different things. The best advice I can give anyone, if you don't want to hire someone, you don't have the money to hire a coach or something like that, is just eat a very boring diet. Eat the same diet day in, day out. Don't waver. Eliminate the foods that I noted above. Your grocery list will almost be exclusively to the outside edges of the store. So your meats, your produce, and things like that. You should very rarely be going down any of the aisles except for if you're getting some salt and pepper, mm, maybe some fats. That's about it. There's It's going to be a very small grocery list. Some proteins, veggies, fats, some fruit maybe in the beginning while you're trying to work out, what's causing problems and things like that. Because you got to have some carbohydrates for your brain to function as well. So, but I would say avoiding starches for the first few weeks and just slowly try to incorporate the ones that I talked about back in your diet and to see if there's any issues with them. Um, that's kind of how you do it. In order to kind of do like when you do a cleanse or whatever, you're basically eliminating all the troublesome foods out from the beginning, and you're trying to reincorporate them and figure out what is causing the problems, and that's kind of what I would recommend you do. There's a great cleanse that Trey has in his chiropractic office called Standard Process. It's a really good cleanse. It basically gives you all the vitamins and supplements that you need to and it gives you a diet that you can follow for the first 3 weeks, and it kind of tells you how to incorporate even the additional proteins back into your diet, like fish and things like that as well. I haven't taken any immunosuppressive drugs in probably 8 years, so I've just been controlling my diet alone. Here and there, I might require a Celebrex or so, but it's just a little bit different NSAID. It doesn't have the GI complications as much. But I don't think, it's a coincidence that since I stopped taking, I've put on about 30 pounds of muscle. Again, I said that a lot of these drugs are catabolic. So, just in a few years, that says a lot in my opinion. But, with Team Hodge, you're gonna not only just get, competition prep. We have rehabilitation. We offer customized plans tailored to your needs. We have posing as well, and should those needs include specific medical conditions, I'm here, and I know I've done the research on these things, and we're here to help you. So I hope you found this video informative, and if you have any questions or have any ideas for further videos or anything like that, just comment, or you can email me or whatever. Anyways, thanks everyone. Bye.